Have you ever wondered why some relationships, despite their promise, leave you feeling drained and confused? Where love begins like a rising tide, gentle, powerful, all-consuming, then quietly becomes a riptide that pulls you under. One moment you're seen, desired, the next your truth is questioned, your instincts muted, your voice slowly rewritten in someone else's tone. This is not love. This is control dressed as devotion. And far too many women walk that line without even knowing it's there. It doesn't begin with a slap or a scream. It begins with praise, with someone saying you're not like the others, with attention that feels divine, as if you've finally been chosen, finally enough. And because you've longed to be seen, your heart opens. But beneath that enchantment lies a subtle negotiation of power, one where your boundaries are slowly bartered away for the illusion of safety. You are not crazy for feeling it. The unease. The way your reality feels slightly altered, but you can't explain why. Like walking through fog and trying to remember your own name. Carl Jung called this the danger of projection. The moment we assign godlike power to another person, when we believe they will complete what we feel is missing inside. But projection is not love, it's illusion. And illusions always ask you to shrink to keep them alive. She, the sovereign queen, knows this, not because she was born wise, but because she was once deceived. She handed over her crown to someone who whispered, "Let me carry it for you." She dimmed her light so he wouldn't feel small. She softened her voice so he wouldn't feel threatened. She told herself it was compromise, but it was sacrifice, not of ego, but of essence. That's how emotional control begins, not with force, but with slow erosion. A comment here, a withheld affection there. Confusion becomes currency. You begin to seek their approval like water in a desert, but it's always just out of reach. This is by design. The emotionally manipulative partner knows that if you're off balance, you're easier to mold. If you're questioning yourself, you won't question them. This isn't a flaw in you. It's a tactic in them. Trauma binds us to patterns. The child who grew up believing love must be earned becomes the adult who tolerates conditional affection, who makes excuses for mistreatment because they believe they are supposed to. That if they just love harder, prove more, stay quiet, it'll return to how it was. But the beginning was never real. It was a hook. Emotional manipulators don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with your energy, your empathy, your light, and then they try to own it. Jung warned us, whatever we deny in ourselves, we project onto others. If you reject your inner authority, you'll attract those who dominate. If you suppress your rage, you'll call in those who provoke it. This is the shadow at work, the parts of us we exile, only to meet them in the people we love, until we reclaim them. Discernment is the queen's sword, not suspicion, not paranoia, discernment, the ability to sense when something is off and trust that feeling. The queen listens to her body. Her nervous system speaks before words arrive. When her chest tightens after a cruel joke disguised as humor, when her stomach turns after being told she's too sensitive. These are not overreactions. They are wisdom. The body never lies. And yet the manipulated woman learns to betray her body to preserve the bond. This is the true wound. Not what he does to her, but what she is taught to do to herself. Gaslighting is not just the denial of your truth, it's the invitation to abandon it, to silence your own knowing in favor of someone else's narrative. This disorients the mind, but the deeper goal is to fracture the self. This is why individuation, the process Jung believed to be the purpose of life, is so vital. Individuation is not becoming who others need you to be. It's the death of false selves, the shedding of roles and masks and defenses until only what's real remains. When you begin to ask, who am I beneath the approval? Who am I without the validation? Who am I when I stop trying to be chosen? Stoic wisdom whispers in the background of this process. The queen knows she cannot control what others do, only how she responds. She stops begging the storm to be calm. She learns to anchor herself, to stop reacting, to start observing. When he withholds affection, she doesn't chase, she notices. When he twists her words, she doesn't explain harder, she pauses. The silence becomes her ally, not a punishment but a boundary. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates. Boundaries don't push people away. They reveal who is willing to meet you with respect. The manipulative partner will call you cold, cruel, selfish, because your no threatens the control their yes depended on. Let them rage. Let them accuse. The queen does not lower her crown to explain her worth. Have you noticed the pattern in your Li? Fi, the moment you begin to stand taller, someone tries to shrink you. That's not coincidence. That's your light disturbing their shadow. The manipulator does not fear losing you. They fear losing power over you. And the moment you see this clearly, the spell breaks. So ask yourself now, what are you holding onto that's holding you back? Is it really love or just the fear of being alone? Are you loyal to them or to the version of yourself you promised to protect? Because the woman who learns to choose herself is dangerous to those who once controlled her. Some relationships begin like poetry and end like puzzles. In the beginning, it's rhythm, laughter, synchrony. You finish each other's sentences, but as time passes, something shifts. You feel like you're always trying to solve something. The silence between texts, the contradictions between words and actions, the feeling that you're walking on eggshells but you don't know why. This is not a loss of connection. It's the revelation of a pattern that was always there. Emotional manipulation doesn't scream, it whispers, it plants doubts, not about the world but about you. Suddenly, you're apologizing for your tone though your words were kind. You're explaining your feelings as if they're on trial. You hesitate before speaking. You rehearse conversations in your mind. This is not love. This is distortion. To see through this distortion, one must understand the architecture of control. Control rarely looks like a fist. It looks like concern. I just worry about you. I only want what's best. But behind the care is surveillance. Behind the compliments, there's correction. And the most dangerous form of control is the one that makes you believe you're free. Jung believed that relationships mirror the unconscious, that what we refuse to see within will appear as fate outside. So when you find yourself drawn to someone who oscillates between adoration and neglect, ask, what story is my soul trying to resolve? What wound is being touched? Because trauma often feels like home. And the nervous system doesn't crave safety, it craves what's familiar. The queen once mistook intensity for intimacy. She confused obsession with depth. The highs were intoxicating, the lows unbearable, but the chaos was a clue. Love does not require you to suffer. Love doesn't erase you to embrace you. If your light has to dim for the connection to survive, it's not love, it's possession. Possessive love is rooted in scarcity, in the belief that to love something one must own it, cage it, claim it, but authentic love is rooted in presence. It does not demand, it does not test, it invites, and it honors. You will know the difference not by how it feels in the moment, but by who you become in its presence. Real love expands you, control confines you. The woman who's been manipulated often internalizes the voice of the one who hurt her. Even after he's gone, his voice lingers. You're overreacting. You're too much. You'll never find better. These are not your thoughts. They are echoes of someone else's fear. The fear that you will one day wake up and remember who you are. And this remembering is dangerous because it threatens the entire foundation of the manipulative dynamic. That foundation depends on your forgetfulness, forgetting your worth, forgetting your power, forgetting that you are whole even when alone. Jung's concept of the anima and animus, our inner masculine and feminine energies, offers insight here. Many women disconnected from their inner masculine search for it in men. They look for strength, stability, decision. But when the inner masculine is unconscious, it attracts distorted versions in others, dominance instead of protection, control instead of clarity. To integrate the animus is to become your own protector. It is to no longer need someone to save you from your emotions, your loneliness, or your fears. It is to build the structure within, so no one can hijack it from the outside. The queen is not self-sufficient out of pride, but out of sovereignty. She knows her needs and meets them herself first. Anyone who enters her life must add peace, not rescue her from its absence. But integration is not instantaneous. It begins with noticing. Noticing when you abandon yourself, when you override your intuition, when you seek answers outside instead of sitting with discomfort. There is no shame in this. This is how many were taught to survive. But survival is not the same as living. And the queen was not born to survive. She was born to rule her own energy, her own truth, her own path. Boundaries are how she begins, not as punishment but as clarity. She no longer explains why she needs space. She no longer debates her right to peace. She simply creates it, not with rage but with certainty. Because she has learned, if someone truly values you, they will honor your boundaries. If they resist, it's not love they wanted, it's access. And access to your energy is not a right, it's a privilege, one that must be earned, not demanded. But boundaries are only the beginning. The deeper work is in reclaiming your emotional sovereignty, to stop being a mirror for others' wounds and start becoming a sanctuary for your own. This means no longer accepting confusion as love, no longer staying silent so others stay comfortable, no longer shrinking to be chosen. Because the woman who shrinks to be loved disappears in the process, and eventually she forgets what it feels like to be fully seen, not as someone's fantasy, but as herself. So if you're listening now, ask yourself, what part of you have you given away to keep the peace? Whose voice are you still carrying in your head, telling you what you should be? And are you ready to let that voice go? Because the moment you decide to listen to your own voice, everything changes. There comes a moment in every woman's life when silence becomes unbearable. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence inside, when your truth has been buried so long it starts to suffocate you. When your needs have been unmet for so long they no longer speak, they scream. And what once felt like loyalty begins to feel like self-abandonment. This is the threshold where the sovereign queen rises, not through rage, not through revenge, but through a sacred remembering that her worth was never negotiable, that her voice was never meant to be filtered through someone else's comfort. That love, real love, asks for your truth, not your obedience. But to rise, she must first see the game for what it is. Emotional control thrives on confusion. The manipulator thrives in blurred lines, mixed messages, shifting rules. One day you're their angel, the next you're too much. One moment they're tender, the next they're distant. It keeps you chasing the high of their approval. It keeps you invested in winning back a version of them that never truly existed. This is the hook, the intermittent reinforcement, a psychological strategy that conditions you to tolerate mistreatment because you're addicted to crumbs of validation, like a gambler at a slot machine, pulling the lever, hoping the lights will flash again, but the house always wins. Your love was never the problem. Your capacity to forgive, to understand, to try again, that's not weakness. That's the depth of your heart. The wound is not your empathy, it's where you placed it. You offered your sacred to someone who fed on it, someone who used your kindness as currency, someone who never wanted partnership, only power. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not fate. This is programming. Childhood wounds reenacted in adult form. The emotionally unavailable father mirrored in the partner who keeps you at arm's length. The critical mother echoed in the lover who makes you question your every move. The manipulator often finds the woman who doubts herself, not because she is weak, but because she was never taught to trust her knowing. And so she becomes easy to rewire, easy to convince, easy to bend. But when she begins to remember her instincts, the power dynamic cracks. Power games end when the player is no longer entertained. The queen no longer plays. She watches. She discerns. She listens to what is not being said. And she stops explaining her worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. The real shift happens when you stop negotiating with someone else's potential and start responding to their patterns. Potential is hope. Patterns are proof. And patterns will tell you everything you need to know. A man who says he loves you but leaves you in confusion does not love you. A person who says they want you but makes you feel small does not see you. Love does not hide behind games. It does not need decoding. Love, in its highest form, is clarity. But clarity requires stillness. And stillness can feel terrifying when you've been trained to equate chaos with connection. That's the hardest part, sitting in the quiet after walking away. Because when you cut ties with emotional manipulation, your nervous system will panic. It will search for the familiar. It will crave the highs and lows. This is not a sign to go back. This is withdrawal from the cycle, from the chemical roller coaster, from the false promise that love must hurt to be real. Healing begins when you stop calling chaos love, when you stop choosing pain because it's predictable, when you sit with the discomfort of your own company and choose not to fill it with another person's dysfunction. This is where your inner masculine steps in, not to rescue but to anchor, to protect the soft, feminine core within you that has always known the truth, to stand guard at the gates of your heart, to say, not everyone gets access, to say, her peace is sacred. And it is, your peace is sacred. Your softness is not a flaw, it is not naive, it is divine, but it needs protection, it needs discernment. NT, because when you give it away too freely, the world turns it into a weapon. They call you dramatic, too sensitive, impossible to please. But the queen knows these are projections. What they call too much is simply what they cannot hold. So hold yourself. Wrap your arms around the girl who once thought love had to be earned. Whisper to her that she was always worthy, that she never had to perform, that her boundaries are not burdens, that her needs are not negotiable. Let her grieve what she lost, the time, the energy, the illusions. Let her rage if she must. The queen does not fear her rage. She lets it burn away the lies. She lets it clear the path, because on the other side of that fire is clarity. Clarity that says, I was never broken, just bound. And once those cords are cut, there is nothing you cannot become. So now ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped making excuses for the way someone treats you? What kind of peace might you feel if you finally stopped begging to be understood? There's a moment when you stop waiting for someone else to wake up, and instead you wake up to yourself. When you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And begin asking, why did I stay? Not from blame, but from truth. Because the queen is not interested in vengeance. She's interested in liberation. And liberation begins when you stop trying to change others and start choosing yourself. Many women stay because they believe love can heal. That if they are patient enough, loyal enough, kind enough, they will soften the hard edges of a partner unwilling to meet them. But here's the secret. Real healing doesn't happen by tolerating mistreatment. It happens by refusing to normalize it. You cannot change someone by being who they need. You only change the game by remembering who you are. The manipulator doesn't fear being alone. They fear losing control over your mind, your decisions, your sense of worth. So they will play nice the moment you pull away, suddenly attentive, affectionate, apologetic. This is not change. This is strategy, a momentary performance to regain influence. Watch what happens when you enforce a boundary consistently. That's when their true character reveals itself. They'll say you're cold, disloyal. They'll accuse you of giving up too soon, but the truth is you stayed far longer than your peace could afford. You gave them time, patience, warnings, chances, and still nothing changed except you. You became smaller, quieter, more confused. The queen knows that is not love. That is slow erosion disguised as intimacy. Jung taught that whatever power we place in others, we lose in ourselves. If you hand someone the keys to your sense of worth, they will eventually lock the door and call it love. That's why individuation, true psychological and spiritual maturity, is not selfish. It's sacred. It's reclaiming your center so no one else can sit on your throne. But this journey requires grief, not just of the person, but of the fantasy, of who you thought they were, of who you had to become to survive the relationship. The queen weeps for the girl who thought she had to earn love, who confused loyalty with self-abandonment, who stayed not because it was right, but because she hoped it would get better. Let her grieve. Let her release the illusion. Let her shed the skin of the shapeshifter she was forced to become. Because the woman rising now will not play those roles again. She no longer explains herself to people who distort her words. She no longer stays to fix someone unwilling to grow. She no longer carries conversations that feel like landmines. Her time is not up for auction. Her heart is no longer a project. You don't owe anyone your energy just because they once called you special. That word means nothing when followed by silence, dismissal, or cruelty. Watch how people respond when you no longer bend. That's when the mask slips. That's when the game ends. The manipulator will either escalate or disappear. Either way, you win. Because the queen is not afraid of endings. She knows that what falls away was never meant to remain. And what is true will never require you to betray yourself to keep it. Do not fear being alone. Fear being surrounded by people who drain you. People who only love the version of you that doesn't challenge them. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not meant to twist yourself into comfort for others. You were meant to stand in your truth, even if it shakes, even if it costs you the relationship. Especially then. Because when you lose what was false, you make space for what is real. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, hide, or deny. Often it is the strong, assertive, sovereign woman who lives in our shadow, because the world told us she was too loud, too proud, too much, but she is not too much. She is you, the whole you, the woman who says, I don't explain my boundaries, I honor them. The one who saw. Wise, I don't settle for connection that confuses me. The one who says, if you cannot meet me in truth, you do not get to meet me at all. Let her lead. Let the shadow become your power source, not your prison, because she has always known what you needed, and now you're finally listening. The queen walks alone before she walks aligned. She is willing to endure the ache of solitude to avoid the slow death of compromise. She is not lonely. She is discerning, and that discernment becomes her shield. So ask yourself now, what would it feel like to no longer be at war with your own voice? What kind of peace might return if you chose truth over attachment? What might happen if the next time someone tries to confuse you, you simply walk away? There's a silence that follows clarity, not the silence of confusion, not the aching silence after a fight. This is different. This silence feels sacred, like walking through a burned forest and noticing new life breaking through the ash. When the queen finally stops trying to decode someone else's contradictions and simply says, no more, something ancient within her exhales. She no longer waits for closure from the one who hurt her. She understands now closure isn't given, it's chosen. It's the moment she stops chasing explanation and starts honoring the experience for what it was. Not a love story, but a lesson in sovereignty. You see, some people are not partners, they're mirrors, brought into your life to show you where you still doubt yourself, where your wounds still ache, where you still confuse control for safety. They do not stay because they're meant to. They stay until you remember. And once you do, they fade, or you walk. Either way, the door closes, not with rage, but with reverence. Because the queen doesn't leave in chaos, she leaves in clarity. The manipulator won't understand this. They'll call it cold, unfair, sudden. But it's not sudden. It's the final decision in 1,000 quiet moments of betrayal. It's the result of every time you felt unseen, unheard, unheld. Every moment you questioned your own mind to preserve the illusion of love. Jung said that the path to wholeness requires us to confront the shadow, not just in others, but in ourselves. It's not enough to label someone a narcissist or a manipulator. You must also ask, what part of me allowed this? What was I still trying to prove? Where was I still seeking permission to be whole? Because the queen knows, healing isn't about vilifying the other. It's about becoming so anchored in truth, no one else's illusion can pull you under again. So now she protects her energy the way others protect gold. Not with walls, but with wisdom. She doesn't rush in. She observes. She listens. Not to the words, but to the patterns. She doesn't need fireworks. She needs consistency. She doesn't crave intensity. She craves safety. And she no longer mistakes butterflies for intuition. Because sometimes, those butterflies are your nervous system warning you, not welcoming you. And here's what changes everything. The queen no longer internalizes rejection. She understands now. If someone withdraws when you set a boundary, they were only there for the version of you who didn't have one. If someone gets defensive when you speak your truth, they were only ever comfortable with your silence. This isn't personal. This is programming. Unhealed people are drawn to those who make them feel powerful. And the moment you claim your own power, the dynamic breaks. You stop being the source of their ego and become a threat to their control. But you are not here to be manageable. You are not here to be convenient. You are not here to shrink. You are here to be whole. And the wholeness begins when you no longer betray yourself for connection. When you stop asking, what if they change? And start asking, why do I stay? When you stop romanticizing potential and begin respecting your peace. The queen chooses peace, not because she's numb, but because she's felt the cost of chaos. She knows what it's like to cry over someone who isn't crying over her, to overthink every word, every silence, to search for meaning in mixed signals. That chapter is over now, because the queen no longer waits to be chosen. She chooses herself. And in choosing herself, she sets a new standard. She's no longer seduced by charm. She looks for character. She doesn't need grand declarations. She needs emotional availability. And most of all, she needs alignment, words and actions, intent and follow-through, presence and respect. She doesn't chase, she magnetizes. She doesn't beg, she receives. She doesn't prove, she embodies. And when someone shows inconsistency, she doesn't make excuses. She makes an exit. This is not hardness, it's clarity. This is not bitterness, it's discernment. This is not fear, it's sacred self-trust. So now breathe deeper than before and ask, what version of you are you ready to release? The one who explained herself to be understood. The one who molded herself to be accepted. The one who sacrificed peace for proximity. Let her go with grace, with love, with gratitude. Because her survival brought you here. but she is no longer needed where you're going. There is a soft power that rises when a woman finally comes home to herself, not the performance of confidence, not the mask of being unbothered, but the true, embodied peace of no longer needing to be anything for anyone. It's in the way she breathes deep, unrushed. It's in the way she speaks clear without explanation. It's in the way she walks away, not out of anger, but because peace has become her bottom line. This is the queen fully integrated. She no longer flinches at red flags. She no longer debates her right to space, to silence, to stillness. Her life is no longer dictated by someone else's moods or needs. She knows that love offered without respect is not love, it's leverage, and she refuses to be leveraged ever again. Her boundaries are not warnings, they are invitations. Meet me in truth or do not meet me at all. When the manipulator tries to return, and they always try, she doesn't respond with rage. She responds with indifference, not because she's cold, but because she's awake. Because she now sees what she could not see before, that love is not earned by enduring pain. It is built in the presence of mutual safety, of reverence, of truth. And that kind of love, authentic, grounded, whole, cannot grow in the soil of emotional games. She doesn't go back. She doesn't re-engage. She doesn't explain why she's gone, because now she understands silence is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's choosing not to cast your pearls before those who trample clarity in the mud of manipulation. She has nothing to prove. She's already free. In the deepest sense, she no longer seeks permission to be who she is, no longer waits for anyone to validate her worth, because she's no longer building her identity on borrowed beliefs. She has dismantled the false self, the one that said, "Be small to be loved, be quiet to be safe, be perfect to be chosen." That self was never real. She is not here to be digestible. She is not here to be admired from a distance. She is here to feel, to see, to know, to love freely, and to leave when that love is not met in kind. Carl Jung believed that the greatest gift of individuation is the union of opposites within, the dance of light and shadow, the integration of softness and strength. She doesn't reject her vulnerability anymore. She wears it like silk over steel. She doesn't suppress her anger. She lets it guide her into deeper alignment. She is no longer just one thing. She is whole. Her trauma no longer runs the show. It no longer decides who she loves, who she tolerates, who she becomes. That script has ended, and in its place, a new story begins. One where she is not the savior, not the sacrifice, not the scapegoat. One where she is the author. That's what emotional intelligence truly is. Not just understanding your feelings, but honoring them. Not just knowing what you want, but walking away from anything that doesn't give it. It's loving with an open heart and a clear mind. It's knowing that setting a boundary is not rejection. It's invitation for deeper respect. It's knowing that your peace is your power, your presence is your offering, and your no is just as holy as your yes. And so the queen stands, no longer needing to be rescued, no longer needing to be chosen. She is already claimed by herself, by her truth, by her inner stillness. She trusts her path even when it's quiet. She trusts her heart even when it aches, because she knows now being alone is not the worst thing. Being disconnected from your truth is. She listens now not to promises, but to patterns. She stays now not for potential, but for consistency. She speaks now not to be liked, but to be heard. And when love arrives, if it does, it will not be a storm. It will be a sanctuary. Not because she demanded it, but because she became it. So now ask yourself one final time. What would your life feel like if you trusted yourself enough to never settle again? What becomes possible when you refuse to shrink? What would it sound like to finally say, with no shame, no apology, "This is who I am. This is what I need, and I will no longer abandon myself to be loved"? Share the moment you finally said, "Enough," and reclaimed your power in the comments below. The woman who sees the truth chooses her peace.